Can you all hear me in the back okay? Yes. Thumbs up. All right, so we're going to start. Appreciate everybody coming in. We still have folks coming through the doors. We should have sold tickets maybe. A couple of things is, first of all, just basic housekeeping, cell phones. My two lovely daughters are in front, so I tell them, please put your phones down. Restrooms are all the way in the back here, just straight through. I talked briefly about COVID. If you're comfortable with masks, hand sanitizers, please feel free to use whatever you want. I want to thank Big Casa in the back, lovely Sarah and her assistant, for setting up and bringing some snacks in here for us. I greatly appreciate that. And this organization really started out of the LBJ meetings. It took place not too long ago. If y'all were out there, I saw an opportunity in Milton and Belinda and a few other folks to really kind of step forward and provide constructive input back to the city, to be good neighbors and try to do the right thing. And that's the point here. That's the entire goal here, is to educate, be good neighbors, run good businesses. But I also want to make sure that we can operate our businesses within the guidelines of what financially works and what doesn't work. So we're going to cover from that. So I'm going to ask the STR founding alliance members to stand up just for a moment to be recognized. And these Milton's over here, Leslie, Nancy, Belinda, who else? So I speak for myself when I say this, not them. I am not an expert in the STR industry, so I've been doing it for about 4.5 years. I've probably made more mistakes than all of them combined. So I've gotten a little bit smarter having made many mistakes. So the other thing is, I'm going to ask questions be held at the end. I know this can be an emotional conversation, so we're going to present nothing but facts that have already been presented to the city through newspaper, city council meetings, and also the work that we did as a counter offer to the city for STR ordinance. So we're going to cover that. So I'll start off here. This mic's a little bit flaky, but bear with me. Okay. One of the first things I like to do is just add a little personal art to this. So all the homes that you see in this presentation are actually properties that are owned by the STR Alliance Committee. So unbelievable. That was only in February, if you guys remember that. It's pretty crazy. So agenda-wise, I'm going to do the introduction of the STR Alliance, who we are, what we are, and why we are. We're also going to cover, Leslie has done a tremendous amount of work on the ordinance, compare and contrast of options 1, 2, 3, and 4 that the city is currently considering, and then our option 5, which is a counter-offer to that. The call to action, Milton is in the back. He's pretty fast. He's over here. So he's got a call to action. We're going to ask you all to do something. It has nothing to do with money or anything like that. We just want you to take action, make sure your voices are heard. And then Nancy is going to cover membership. We have grown an astounding number in a very, very short period of time. So we're hitting a nerve here in a positive way. So that's the goal. Okay, speaking of goals, first and foremost, be good neighbors. The first meeting we had, we sat down at the table, and I asked, I think at the time there was 5 of us maybe, I said, as an industry, should we and could we be doing something better and different? And the unanimous response around the table was, yes, we all could be doing something better and different. So that's the overriding culture that we're trying to create with this organization and this room as well. And formalize the citizens group. A united voice is much, much stronger than one voice. So that's our goal here, and you all make us much stronger by being here. So thank you again. Promote the health, safety, and welfare of our community. That's very important to us as well. We want to run good, solid, responsible businesses and be good neighbors. And then work in partnership with the city of Fredericksburg. I will tell you right now, the mayor, city council, Kent Meyer, all those folks have been very embracing of our approach. They've invited us to meetings. We've had we've had individual meetings to go through our options. I think that they have gone out of their way to embrace us and include us whenever possible, and I want to continue to build on that really good relationship. And also, reading the newspaper, there's a few times I saw dating in there that I know going back to 4 years ago when I was on the vision committee that wasn't factually correct. And it wasn't anybody doing anything wrong, it's just they had the wrong information. So I want to drive a data-driven culture estimate from data, not from emotion, and that's what we're going to try to do tonight here. So, okay, deliverables. My wife, lovely wife Charlotte, is in the room here. In my prior life, I was in the corporate world, and I worked with Walmart to some extent in store operations, and they taught me that the purpose of the greeter at Walmart wasn't to necessarily welcome you and tell you what a wonderful day it is, your son or daughter is a wonderful, beautiful little human being and have a wonderful Walmart day. The purpose of Walmart greeters really was to ensure that if you were walking back, I'll point to my daughter here again, if you're walking back in with some merchandise for a return, that you don't try to go put that back on the shelves yourself. They direct you to customer service, so they're not getting damaged material back into the stores, and there's nothing going on relative to shrink or theft. Shrink is a technical word for theft in the retail stores. So I do the same thing with my STR guests. Every Friday, I walk down with these little free maps, and I point out things like condos and Java Ranch and all the cool places that we like to go. And I do that for the same reason Walmart had greeters. I don't do that to really so much inform, but I do inform. I do it to see if they're making eye contact with me, or they asking me relevant questions. If they're engaging with me, that tells me a pretty good indicator I have a good guest. If I have folks that are staring at the ceiling and they're trying to figure out where the nearest liquor store is, then I know I'm going to have to be much more vigilant that weekend. So that's the reason I do that. That's a trick I learned from the Walmart folks. But the other part is, we had a nice conversation, Linda and I did today with Ernie Loeffler, and Ernie talked about raising the bar for Fredericksburg as a whole. He was talking about restaurants as an example, wineries, STRs as a part of that. So one of the things that we want to do is build some of the best practices. Again, look at the audience here. You all know this industry really well. I know you do. You have unique things you're doing, kind of like I do with the map. How can we all learn from each other? And how can we become a little bit better in this industry, providing hospitality to our guests coming in town? Already in a very short time frame, Leslie showed us some pretty cool things she does on Airbnb. Milton's doing some things that I wasn't thinking about, so we're kind of learning from each other. We compete at some level, but I don't feel like there's any competition in this room because we all do what we do really well. And also working transparently with our neighbors and our city government. Again, being open and honest with our folks, making sure our neighbors know that we're trying to be better than what we accomplish, and that's another part of what we're trying to do here. So let me talk about numbers. So I think it's important to understand the financial impact STRs have on Fredericksburg. It's far more reaching than I thought it was. So this is information I got today from Ernie, and Ernie's okay with me borrowing this, but this shows the amount of dollars spent from an average visitor coming into town. So I'll point to day trip and overnight just specifically. But day trip, they spend about $174. So typically they come into a winery, buy some wine, and they come into town, have lunch, and then they head back to Austin or San Antonio. If we can get them to stay over one night, then that dollar amount goes to $751. So the cost of a hotel, STR, breakfast the next morning, probably some gifts, things of that nature. So it's really important to the city and to our economy if we can have good, clean hotels and STRs to house these folks because they will spend money here. And we were at a city council meeting last night. The sales tax revenue projections for next year, they're anticipating conservatively 3 to 4% increase because of retail sales in town has been through the roof. So it's pretty impressive. This is several people have asked me about this. This is kind of a trickle-down impact financial diagram of what STRs do in this town. So if you look at STRs in the middle of this, we touch electricians, transportation, pest control, air conditioning companies, restaurants, retail, local labor and cleaning, wineries. I'll emphasize wineries. There's a lot of money that's generated here into the local economy. And Milton made a very good point the other day that if the money is generated here and you live here, that money is going to stay here. You're paying your mortgages here, you're paying your electricity bills. All that money stays here to help drive a more robust economy. So it's pretty important. So we also touch on, because some of the folks here may have STRs that you don't live in, it's a secondary building or a secondary property, you're paying full property tax. You're not paying homesteaded tax. That's a big number. Also, we found that we generate 70% of the overall hot tax revenue as of last year. That's a the city. It's very important what they do with those money. I put up utilities, but that's really probably kind of a wash. If you live there or whether you rent there, you're going to pay utilities when they're doing it. Rendition tax, I think you all know what that is in the room here. You're paying taxes on those capital assets that are in your homes. Lawnmowers, furniture, televisions, things of that nature. Those are all capital depreciation assets, and they're taxed every single year. So you pay that tax. And the average resident doesn't do that. Robin Hood school taxes, near and dear to me, having a junior going to FHS here. There's a lot of money that's generated. Some of that goes to the Robin Hood piece. Sorry about that. And then the other thing is, we did some research. For every dollar that is spent on lodging, we believe 40% of that is spent on a retail sales piece, meaning they come to the hotel or STR, and they're going to go into town and spend 40% of whatever they spend with us on dinners, drinks, t-shirts, whatever it is that they're buying. So it's a big number. This is an important one because if you look at 2018, and I don't mean to kill you with bar charts, I promise I won't do that again. 2018, 19, and 20, if you look at the blue, that's the hotels. The hotels are a big partner with us in the STR industry. I don't view them as competition, they're partners. But hotels are a very robust business at 43. 39% they started to drop a little bit in 2019, and they went to 30 in 2020. And you see the STR numbers, we went up dramatically. And I think all of you, did anybody in this room have bookings in March or April of last year? You're the lucky ones. Ours went from 3 months out to 0 when COVID hit. Anyways, I won't go into all that. But the fact of the matter is we recovered faster. And there's some anecdotal thinking why that is, because if I'm coming with my family, I don't want to be exposed respectfully to 80 other families in the hotel with a common area with breakfast in the lobby. I want to go to my STR, which I know is clean, where I can do a secondary wipe down, and I feel a little bit more secure. So that number rebounded pretty dramatically in 2020 for STR population and the revenue we generated. What's really important about that is the city responded and recovered much, much faster because of the STR industry. Cleaning crews went back to work, electricians went back to work, plumbers went back to work, pest control companies went back to work. Our economy rebounded, I would argue, much faster and much better than other neighboring towns or even major cities. Okay? So that's my little pitch here, but Leslie's done a tremendous amount of work putting some data together on the options, and so I'm going to turn the microphone over to her. Thank you, Leslie.
Juggle paper, microphone, and a clicker here. So we'll see if I can do it. So my name is Leslie Spraggins. My husband Kevin and I moved here 18 years ago with our 3 kids and raised the kids here, except, well, one is still in high school, so we're almost done raising kids here. We own small businesses here. We sort of, just to give you a little background on me and why I'm doing this, we got into the STR business sort of by accident. I fancy myself interested in construction and design, and so I bought a house right before COVID to flip. And then the bottom dropped out, like we know, and everything was a little crazy, and we thought, yikes, what are we going to do? We'll be able to sell it. We didn't know. So we decided to STR until we figured out what was going to happen. So that was our first short-term rental. Then, lo and behold, in that same year, the little lady that lived behind us passed away, and her house went on the market. I'm like, oh no, we need to get that because somebody's going to build a big old house in our backyard and look at us. And I'm sure you're familiar with these kinds of things. So we put in an offer on that house, not the best one, but because we knew the family, we were able to get that house. Not at a cheaper price because we were local people, but at the highest dollar price to outbid everyone else. So there was no incentive there from that family that sold us that house for us to long-term rent that because we had to pay premium price for it. We couldn't put one of our kids in it because they couldn't afford it. So really our only option was to keep that house going, was to short-term rent it. So we put a bunch of money in it, we renovated it, we made it beautiful, and now it's a short-term rental. And I say all of that to say we didn't come here to go into business being a short-term rental, but here we are. We live here, we want to stay here, we want to continue to be able to live here. And these are just ways that local people can do that. We contribute to the economy, we run our businesses here, we shop at HB, we shop at probably lots of your businesses too. So I just wanted to let you know that because a lot of the meetings we've heard from people saying, you know, people are from out of town, they're coming in here and they don't care about Fredericksburg, but 50% of us are here and we do care. And I think a lot of those people do too. So I just want to let you know that that's my background. I have very limited experience about planning and zoning, but I've done a lot of research when all this happens. So I'm going to tell you kind of what we've been doing. So I'm definitely not an expert. Okay. So in your packet, you'll find this little thing here. So this is not all the information. This is just a part of the information. It was too much to go on the slide, so we printed it and put it in the packet. So on July 12th, the city hosted a workshop where they presented options for short-term rentals, changes in the zoning for short-term rental, proposed changes. Before that meeting, we had not had the privilege of seeing their options, so we created our own. After that meeting, we then, with the benefit of having heard City Council's opinions on the matter, we went and rewrote ours again. And so what you're seeing is the city's options from that July 12th meeting and then our options, which then have been adjusted since that July 12th meeting. This is not all. I will go into the rest of it later, but this is just the beginning of it. It was too much to put on a slide. So let me go through this and then give you a little color on each of the things. So there were 5 areas that the city was most interested in, and that was noise, trash, parking, fire, and of course limiting short-term rentals. So the noise proposed changes, the first was requiring a sound monitoring device be installed and that the owners, operators monitored that. So we as an alliance did lots of research about that. We thought that was a good idea. However, we felt that it should be a passive monitoring device, meaning one that's not recording conversations, it's not listening in, and that it only be in properties that had 6 or more occupants. Because we felt that 2 and 4 properties were not the problem properties with noise. So we didn't feel like everyone should have to do that. So that was our proposed change. They proposed to modify the sound ordinance. We did not think that was necessary to have a sound ordinance. It would be nice if it were policed, right? So require near and side setbacks for pools, hot tubs, fire pits to be 15 feet from the property line. So we didn't recommend this. It's mainly because we didn't see the value of moving a fire pit 15 feet because smoke, as we know, travels more than that. Hot tub noise, as we know, travels more than that. So we didn't see the value in that. I mean, that's fine if they wanted to do that, but we didn't recommend it. Requiring quiet hours from 10 to 7 Sunday through Thursday and 12 to 7 Friday to Saturday, which is actually an improvement over the current hours. We didn't feel that we needed to change those, but if they wanted to change it to make them more lenient, that was fine with us. But we did think that STR owners needed to post quiet hours near gathering spaces outdoors. So like for me, I put a note on the back door coming and going because that's where all the activity is on my back porch. So that seems to help there along with the noise aware monitor. So those were their noise options, the things they were looking at, okay? Trash. So they wanted to require multiple trash cans for overflow and that they were potentially going to link this to occupancy, meaning the more people you had, the more trash cans you were required to have. So we didn't feel there needed to be an ordinance change on this, but we thought we could educate owners on better ways to deal with trash. Now trash, as the city has begun to gather data about trash, that seems to be like the major offense that's happening. And, but we're unsure from the city, we're not able to get information yet about what that means. Does that mean, I got flagged one day because I didn't pull my trash can in quick enough that next morning, right there, fast. And then if your trash can is 2 inches too high. So what we don't know, I imagine this looks like a trash blowing all over the place, but we really don't know what are these violations. So it'll be interesting to find out. So parking. So the city's looking at 1.5 parking spaces per bedroom. We as an alliance thought that this was a little too robust for us in living in this small town, these old properties. We looked at 1 parking space per 4 occupants, with a maximum of 3 parking spaces. That's what we recommended to the city. And the main reason was, if we require 1.5 parking spaces per bedroom, then, for instance, both my units are 3-bedroom, but I have plenty of parking on one. The other is old, real old, and I don't have it. So the big beautiful grass I just put in would have to be converted to a parking lot. So then it would be gravel parking lots in front of these homes, which would be sad. Another suggestion was to limit your occupancy based on the number of parking spaces that you're willing to put in. Well, that's pretty interesting. So I don't know if anybody wants to raise their hand if they're willing to limit their occupancy based on, I think I would figure out a way to put that parking lot in there, right? So we would still have the gravel parking lots in our neighborhoods, and that would be sad to see. So we didn't recommend that, basing the parking spaces on what the owner was willing to put in. So fire. They were willing to modify the ordinance governing fires within the city limits. We felt it was more reasonable just to educate guests on fire safety and fire pits. And after hearing city council about this, it seemed like city council wasn't too passionate about this. The member of the fire department, I can't remember if it was the marshal or not, stood up and said there had been no fire-related complaints or no problems with fire pits that he knew of to date. So maybe that's a non-issue, I don't know. Then on down is more into the limiting area. So need to determine how many square feet per person in a bedroom affects life safety. That's super broad. They didn't define it on purpose because they're still working on it, I think. We defined it as a bedroom will contain a minimum of 70 square feet for 2 occupants and then an additional 35 square feet per occupant after that, okay? So that came from the International Building. Thank you. The permits are good for the life of the city. This is a city proposal. Permits are good for the life of the structure and can be transferable between owners with 10 days notice when ownership changes, and then the yearly permit fee would still be required. That sounds great to us, except we would add that it be a 15 business day notice when ownership changes. And that kind of came from the city council meeting. We proposed 30 originally, and the city council kind of started talking about 15. That's where we landed, so we'll see what happens. Require inspections only during initial permitting when violations are suspected or complaints or after remodels or additions. So this was interesting because they're saying they would require inspections only at initial permitting. So that's much more lenient than it is now. We had originally said require inspections every 3 years, and that we stuck with that because coming out of the city council meeting, the city council seemed to be responsive to maybe having some sort of checks on down the road to make sure things were still in compliance and safe. So we supported that. A permit fee increased from $150 to $500. So we don't know where the $500 came from. We tried 100 ways to Sunday to figure out a number of what seemed fair to us. We couldn't do it. So what we did was we came up with, we're waiting to see what the city budget is, because once we know the city budget, then we'll know, you can back into the number with how many of us there are. Because I think it was Jerry Lukenbach said, the city shouldn't make money on the permits. So we're waiting for the city budget. We've asked for it. So hopefully we'll get that soon, and then we can come up with a number that would be fair. Create a fee structure for violations and permits that can be revoked after, create a fee structure for permits, and then the permit can be revoked after a period of 90 days after the 6th violation in a calendar year. So we agree with that. We agree if you're a bad operator and violations in a year, there should be a consequence. So that seemed fair to us because it helps all of us if we're all good operators. Okay. So now the proposed, 4 proposed options the city came up with for our funds. This isn't in the packet, okay? So, I'm sorry. All right. So, 4 proposed options. So, option 1 would be to keep current ordinance regulations and enforcement we have. That sounds pretty good, right? Option 2, keep current ordinance regulations but limit occupancy 2 occupants per bedroom plus 2 overnight guests. I don't know how many of you have more than 2 occupants in a bedroom. Right? Okay. Option 3, allow owner occupied by right, meaning the owner lives on the property. Allow STR accessory dwelling if owner or long-term tenant resides on the property and lot is greater than 2,000 square feet. Then require a conditional use permit for non-owner occupied short-term rentals. So I don't know if you're familiar with conditional use permits. I wasn't. So a conditional use permit would look like, I'd like to have an STR. So I applied for a conditional use permit with the city. Then everybody within 200 feet of my proposed STR would get a letter. Then they would be invited to come and speak about how they feel about that at a P&Z meeting. And then that would happen. And if P&Z would vote and it went on, then this would happen again at the city council meeting. So it's quite a process to get a conditional use permit. It's not that easy sometimes. So a conditional use permit would be required for a non-owner occupied STR, which are both mine. Let's think about yours. Option 4, allow owner occupied by right. Allow STR accessory dwelling if owner or long-term tenant resides on the property and the lot is greater than 10,000 square feet. Accessory dwelling or main structure could be an STR. Okay, so, okay. The what? The cow. The cow. Oh, sorry. All right, so allow an STR accessory dwelling, another building on your property, if the owner or a long-term tenant resides on the property, okay, and the lot is greater than 10,000 square feet. And so it could either be the front building or the back building, could be the STR either, okay? May allow the conditional use permit, which we just talked about, for non-owner occupied STRs in areas that have transitioned to an STR neighborhood. And we'll talk about that in a second. Or due to proximity to Main Street and surrounding development patterns, no conflict will be created between STR and adjacent uses. This is on a case-by-case basis. These are not my words. I've written it differently. Okay, so here's where we're talking about the STR neighborhood. Create new STR mixed-use zoning district. That's big, that's different. Identify areas where this zoning would be more appropriate. So creating an entirely new zoning district for STRs. District would have higher densities or allow more STR units than are currently allowed in R1 districts. So if you're lucky enough to make it into the district, then what will happen to your property values? If you're unlucky enough, what will happen to your property values? And if you're an R1 owner that lives in that district, you not only have one STR beside you, but now multiple. Interesting. And then lastly, prohibit short-term rentals in the remainder of all of your R1 zoning districts. So we proposed option 5. Incorporate all the permitting, code enforcement, inspection fees, and parking recommendations outlined previously, which is on the right side of that very busy column that you saw. Limit occupancy to 1 occupant per 35 square feet in a sleeping room after the minimum of 70 square feet are met. And then designate non-sleeping rooms are included but not limited to kitchens, dining rooms, bathrooms, and closets. And that really came from that defining a sleeping room from the city council meeting on the 12th. There was concern that people were putting beds in closets and pantries and things like that. And so we don't want that. So it's not safe. So we decided to define it. Allow owner occupied and non-owner owner occupied by right. That's what we have now. Allow STR dwelling unit by right if owner or a long-term tenant occupies the property and the lot is greater than 10,000 feet. That also came out of the city council meeting. Allowing long-term renters and short-term renters on the same lot to help boost our long-term rental inventory of homes. And then, of course, we don't want any caps on STRs or conditional use permits. So, that is like a ton of information that I went through pretty quickly. We definitely have questions about it at the end. But if any of that is interesting to you and you want to know more, that's great. If you want to get involved, that's also great. And Milton Butler is going to now tell you what you can do about it.
Hi everybody, I'm Milton Butler, and I moved here about 23 years ago. For the first time, I moved away, moved back, moved away, moved back, and then I moved away again and moved back. And I'm here. I've owned a short-term rental for about 15 years, different ones. And those of you that have had that kind of tenure owning, you know this industry. You understand this community. You understand what's attractive. I think that 70% up there reflects the attitudes of a guest that comes to this town and says, I don't want to necessarily stay in a hotel, especially if you travel a lot. They want to stay in our cool, really cute, wonderful guest houses, B&Bs. They love it. That's the culture of this town. And so during the time that I've been here, we do two things. We run STRs, 4 units, and I also flip historic homes. Usually sells investment properties and are turned into STRs. And we love that. We love doing that here. We love the freedom of being able to choose what we really want for a living. And that's my living. That's what I do. And I began to think about some of, some of the concerns, the attitudes are, we've had enough. We have enough STRs here. We have enough B&Bs. We're tired of this. Some people would love to see them all go away. Why? Because they're changing the culture of our town. And you know what? It is. It is changing. It is changing. And no longer will Billy ride his bicycle in a historic district down Austin or San Antonio or Travis. And even if there weren't STRs, my 2-year-old is not going to ride his bicycle down San Antonio or Travis, Austin Street, because it wouldn't be safe anyway. But you know what? I have a house in the Oaks of Windcrest, and their kids riding bicycles all around that neighborhood. And if you look out in Stone Ridge, you'll see kids riding bicycles all around that neighborhood. So what I think we're kind of seeing is, it is changing, but it's shifting. We're seeing a bit of a movement to families that are moving into those neighborhoods. And our historic homes, the homes closer to the city, are actually becoming more toward STRs. And I'm not just so sure it's a bad thing. It's a thing. It's what's happening. It's who we are. It's where we are. And I don't want to negate the feelings that people have about that change, but I think it's a reality. I moved to Austin in 1985. Does anybody know what was going on in Austin in 1985? It was cool. It certainly was. And you were cool like that, so you lived it. That was a time of a no-growth city leadership, if you remember that. And so the objective was, let's don't issue any more building permits. Let's don't build any more water facilities. Let's keep it from growing. And that was an interesting idea. A bunch of leftover hippies that didn't have no roads, that's right. But guess what? Cedar Park didn't want to do that, and Round Rock didn't want to do that, and Leander didn't want to do that. And they said, come out here. And now, how many of you just love driving through Austin today? Right? It's a joy. It didn't work. And so for anyone to come to us and say, no STRs in Austin, kind of makes me think about going into Hershey, Pennsylvania and saying, we're not going to make chocolate here anyway. Who's not going to do that? It doesn't quite make sense because that's actually who we are. That's the fabric of this charming little town. Now, do I think it should be managed well? Absolutely. And I believe that's what we're about, is trying to help owners and affiliated businesses do this in a very smart, respectful way. And we can do that. And here's what I would like to ask you guys to consider doing. Get involved. You're here. And I got to tell you, I'm thrilled with the number that showed up that says, we're concerned about this. We're interested in this. Attend all public meetings when STRs are somehow part of the agenda. All right? Yesterday we sat through such an exciting city council meeting where we're talking about budgets. It's not that fun, but you know what? It's important because there are elements in that budget that matter to us. Absolutely. And we're advocating for our rights, our right to use our property the way we want to, our rights to continue to earn a living out of our businesses. Right? I will tell you personally, my son is going to college on what I'm doing today. And if I can't do that today, then my son's paying for his own college. Right? He might email city council members. I don't know one city council member or even the mayor who will ignore email messages. They read them, they're interested. They want to understand what people are thinking. And those who are really ambitious and would like to be reelected are really easy things. Write them. Call city council members. Meet personally with city council members or the mayor. If you know them, talk to them. Right? Talk to them. Write respectful, data-driven letters to the Fredericksburg standard. Put yourself out there. I think a lot of times we think, I don't know, there might be reprisals. Guess what? There might be. But you know what? I would take a reprisal any day over some government telling me I can't do what I want to with my property. So that's my position. In a respectful way. Invite any Fredericksburg STR or affiliate business owners to join this alliance. And we want you to join this alliance. The bigger our voice, the more we're heard. I don't think we're crazy about what we're trying to do. We want to help every owner run their business better. And you know what? That's just not going to cost you much money, right? It might take you some time. We are out looking for best practices all the time. We have partnered with Airbnb. We have partnered with VRBO. We have partnered with CASA. These people understand this industry and they are feeding us data constantly to help us run our businesses better. Wow, that's pretty amazing. And it's a gift for us. And it will help us run our businesses better. And I also want to second what Leslie said. We do not support operators that are irresponsible. We're not going to support them. Right? People that ignore the fact that they need to have permits, that ignore the ordinances of this town, we don't support that. And Airbnb and VRBO and the council don't support that either. And they will take action on that. So we want to operate responsibly. We want to be good neighbors. And so we're asking you to join in with us to do exactly these things, right? It doesn't take a lot of time to write a letter or an email. Take a step forward to protect your rights. All right, we're going to have one more bit. You're going to talk to us about membership updates, right? Mm-hmm. All right, Nancy is, and then we'll get into questions. Over to you, Nancy.
My name is Nancy Herman. I don't have any fancy slides. The reason I don't have slides is because this is changing by the hour. I could almost say it's changing by the minute. It'd be very fair to say that. We started this push. We started getting the word out. Well, let me back up for a second. I started a Facebook page back, I believe, in 2016, maybe 2015. I called it the Fredericksburg Owners Alliance. It's changed names a ton of times since then. There's a few of you in here that I've met that come in and introduced yourselves, and you guys joined way back when, and you guys have been very active on the Facebook group. So with that said, I do invite anybody else to please join the Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, I know Facebook is old news, but if you're on Facebook, please join the group, because that's very up to date, very active, immediate answers. People ask questions about garden cleaning, all that kind of stuff. We all help each other. When we did that, there was probably about 60 of you. Fast forward to probably about a year ago, I had about 110. Then it jumped up to about 130, and then it kind of went roll. It stopped. Now, we were all very active, we were all very helpful in helping each other, but it kind of slowed down. This team came together and they gave us a boost, and by us, I mean all of us that own homes. They gave us a boost that we haven't seen, and I consider it an immense blessing for them to have created this alliance that they did and invited me in, and we teamed up, and this is what we have today. So with that said, Facebook has now shot up to 254 members, and I have 13 people that have applied to be members, but they just haven't answered the questions. With that said, there are questions. You have to verify that you are actually an owner. You have to give me something that tells me that you are somebody we want in this group. You are somebody that's going to contribute to this group. Now, the flip side of that is we also have membership on a sign-up through our website. And so again, we've invited everybody. We're going to continue to invite everybody. We want you to invite all your friends to go to the website and sign up and register to be part of this. The word that was given to me today was groundswell, and oh my gosh, is it ever. So right now, we have 190 members that have registered through the website. That is happening. Yay! That took place in 2 weeks, in 12 days actually. 190 people have gone to our website and registered to be involved. If that doesn't tell you that there's something exciting going on, I need to come just talk about it. So with that said, I'm not, if you know me, you know I like to talk. But I'm really not that good at speakers, so I'm going to hand the mic back over. But you guys sign up on the website if you haven't yet. If you're on Facebook, join on Facebook. Answer the questions. I'd love to have you.
What's been such a pleasure, not a surprise, but a pleasure, is we have a really smart people that jumped into this thing very quickly. And it's kind of funny to see the leadership that emerges from all of us, Milton, Leslie, Belinda, who is our secret weapon, and probably just an amazing person, and Nancy, and everybody that's been involved with this. It's been phenomenal. The fact that we have so many people so quickly is exciting, because you're right, we're hitting a nerve, and I think it's something that we're all passionate about. I want to reinforce the message that we are not a political organization. Nobody's running for office here. We're not asking for money. We're not asking for anything. We just want to band together as responsible owners and have a single, stronger, united voice. So that's our goal. So did I miss anything, folks? Okay. So we want to open up with questions, things that we missed, something that's important to you that maybe we didn't touch on. I want to ask somebody to step forward. Maybe Nancy can help with the mic.
No, go ahead.
Any questions in the room here?
R2 is not affected at all. R2 zoning, okay. And as I understand, R1 zoning is about 7,500 square feet minimum, so you have to be 10,000 square feet according to their proposal. Okay, I will say, I've been in real estate for 35 years, I've lived in Austin, and government is not good.
I like our first question. That's really a statement.
Yes.
Yeah,
We'll post the
so
whole
we're going to put
presentation.
all this on the website. So I saw people taking pictures. That's awesome. We will get the website's only 4 weeks old.
It's being updated.
So we're in our infancy, and we do a lot of this after hours, so bear with us, but that will be sure. www.fredericksburgstr.com. Very simple.
My name is Terry Morford. I live in Spicewood. I'm one of the all centers. I have 2 vacation
There are
rentals
no all
here.
centers.
Anyway, my question is, how long is it going to take before the city settles on what their decisions are? When is that?
Good question. So the proposals are being reviewed as we speak right now. The indication that we have gotten is it will go to the Planning and Zoning Committee first. The Planning and Zoning will vote on it, and depending on the number that votes for it, then it goes to City Council for vote. If the majority of the Planning and Zoning agree with whatever option they agree on, then the City Council doesn't need a supermajority meeting. I think it's 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 4, I guess. So that's kind of the sequence, but the timing is, we've been told, late September to somewhere in mid-October. It's a pretty short window. So time to speak up is right now.
Hey, I have a place on West San Antonio right down the street, and I'm R2, but my question is, I live on West Austin, where the noise is out of control. And I know the garbage is a problem, but the noise thing is really going to be the thing that moves the people that live here 100% of the time to come after the STRs.
I totally understood, and that's why we're advocating. There's a technology called Minute, M-I-N-U-T, and it looks like a smoke detector. And it's, go ahead.
Second question, have you run that as a flagpole with the platforms, VRBO and Airbnb?
The Minute product is recommended by Airbnb. It came to me from Airbnb. So let me explain. It's a passive listening device. It doesn't hear my voice articulate anything. It just hears the noise level. And it sends me a text if I'm too loud. I haven't seen regulations on that, but when I walk my guests through there, I do indicate that we have noise requirements and noise monitoring. I haven't had any pushback so far, but again, I'm just one small business owner.
You know, I think one of the things that we found is, I mean, think about when you go on vacation somewhere, and you stay in a town, you stay in a house, Airbnb, you don't know what all the ordinances are, all the regulations in that town. You don't even know if the next door neighbor is a resident or not, right? So education is hugely important. One of the things that we put in all of our units are house rules. So there's a neighbor right next door, so please respect it. It's very important to understand that the quiet hours are from 10 to 7 in the morning. Well, if you don't educate your guests, they're not going to know them. And so we advocate, put that out there, put quiet signs by your hot tub, put quiet signs by your fire, so people are educated. And I have to tell you, I have never had a guest that if they know what the rules are, they play by the rules.
Milton, one thing I would add to that is we requested that the Convention and Visitors Bureau create, what did we call it? Enjoy Fredericksburg Responsibly, I think, brochure, which would have all the city codes and ordinances in it and all the rules. And it would be a pamphlet or something, whatever they decide, that we would all put in all, so it would be consistent in the message that we were giving all of our guests. Would be a very consistent message. Yeah.
So I don't think I answered your question on the time, because I want to make sure that one of the things I did is, again, this is best practice, I think, is I met all my neighbors initially when I started up. So I walk around, and I know Mark next door, and I know Stacy, I enjoy her in here as well today. My goal is, anybody who has a problem with my property, I want them to call me, I want them to text me, they have my cell phone numbers. Now, in your case, I don't know your instance, maybe those folks are out of town, but the operator should still be taking care of that, getting more trash cans. I understood that. I did understand that. Let me tell you one quick story that I promised to move on, because your question is very important. One of the things that us council meeting 2 weeks ago, we asked them, how many infractions do you have now STRs in the city proper of Fredericksburg? We had a total of 15, looking for Leslie, 15 in 2 weeks out of 550-ish STRs. Today I got an email from Kent Meyer saying there was 106, 129 in 1 week. So I'll tell you, they hired more code enforcement officers, and you're going to see a greater inspection of things as small as yard signs, watering. Those were all in that spreadsheet I saw this morning. So they're being much more closely monitored, I think. Yes, sir.
has the city given any indication as to if they were to pass the STR district and the CUP requirements, what they would do with the existing STRs? Would it
Leslie, what else?
It is written in their document that existing STRs would be grandfathered. The problem that we have is they failed to define grandfathering. We've asked for a definition, and they said we're working on it. So we do not know what that means.
So we've actually taken that to legal counsel to define grandfathering. Is there a term, and what does it mean? And if so, is it transferable by selling a property to you? Are you not grandfathered? And we are not getting a clear answer on that. So that's a point of concern for all of us. Yes, sir.
Good evening. First thing, I live on Travel Street. 5 of the adjacent properties went from being neighbors to being businesses. So I'm very impacted because my odds are 5 to 1 that there's going to be somebody out of control. I have to say hats off to La Casa, because they have clamped down the last 5 or 6 weeks. And if you keep that up, you're not going to see me complain about anything. Okay? I'm just saying, because we couldn't park in front of our house. Because the house next to us can sleep up to 15, and the people across the street can sleep 12. So they blocked our driveway. We couldn't get in and out of their house. We couldn't park in front of our house. Their trash is up in our pool. A lot of little crap, right? But the last 5 or 6 weeks, y'all shut it down. And I'm looking at him because he's got a constant on his shirt. I want more owners like you, though. I can guarantee you that none of the people staying in the houses around me were ever introduced by anybody. I'm just saying, if more owners like you, you got my support for more STRs in Fredericksburg. And I also have to say, I like most of y'all's proposals.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so I do like what's going on here. There's a resident. There are some bigger users, and I can relate to what she's saying. And some of the things that aren't considered is like my next door neighbor, the house behind her, they put in a pool. Well, the pool's higher than her fence. And so the women that were running around topless a couple of weeks ago were not really that welcome by my wife or my neighbor.
Well, what's the address? I'm asking for a friend. So let me comment a couple things there on the neighbor piece. First of all, the Casa, Verbo, Airbnb have all said we're not just hosting hospitality companies. We want to be a portion of compliance to help residents in town. So if we have repeat offenders on trash, to your point, or whatever the case may be, they're willing as a software partner to step up and help try to drive compliance as well. So we want to be, again, point number one, we want to be good neighbors. So thank you for your comments.
So my question is, how does the city track these issues, and how do they report on them so we can measure this?
That, I don't know if you're at the meeting sitting next to me, because I asked the exact same question. So my question was, I like data, where are the hotspots? They have a map of all the STRs, and I said, can you zero in on a profile that says this house is more likely to be a problem than the next one? Is it density of population? Is it proximity to bars? Show me the data. And the city didn't have an answer, and I said, well, why not? He said, well, we don't always get the complaints directly. Sometimes it goes to the police. Sometimes it goes to code enforcement. Sometimes, in my case, I get that text from my neighbor, or I get the alarm going off my passive monitor. So it doesn't all come into one place. But the recommendation we gave back to City Council 5 weeks ago was to build one repository, website, phone number, where all complaints go in. And that way you can start to track the location, repeat offenders, and if you have some meaningful data to say, you know what, I'm a bad operator, I've had 6 calls.
I think for me, I need to understand the problem, right? So I don't know how to data. Is it a big problem? Is it a small problem? What is it, right? So I guess we don't have it. It would be nice to have it, right, at some point. Because again, you typically don't run your business based on exceptions. So I'm just trying to understand what we're talking about.
So I would encourage you to come to city council meetings. They've changed a little bit in terms of showing data. I will tell you, it was 4 weeks ago, they showed 0.01 infractions on trash, noise. The largest infraction they had, I forget what it was, 12%, something like that, was on security alarms going off. I don't know about you guys, but I don't put a security alarm in operation if I have an STR case. So, and then, as I mentioned earlier, and today also looking at a list that says it's much, much I think the city's trying to get there, but they're not there yet. Excellent questions, everyone.
Another question about that. Yep. We have a guest house that's outside city limits, about 2 miles. We obviously benefit from the library economy. Are you encouraging membership from STR owners outside the city limits?
Yes.
Anybody that's in this industry, whether you're a hotel, STR owner, operator, cleaning staff, electrician, plumber, retailer, anybody that's understanding and supporting the STR organization, we would like to have you be affiliated. At the moment, I think our efforts have been to make sure we're getting STR owners in here to help drive and craft policy feedback to the city. We're very inclusive of this industry. We want everybody to be involved in having voice.
Let me jump in for just a second. There's going to be 2 options. There'll be an email going out, let's just say within about a month. So right now, what our registration is just names and emails. I will be sending an email out within about a month that's going to be asking people to define your position. So if you are a permitted owner, that means you live inside the city limits. And you remember, if you are a non-permitted member, it means that you just live outside the city limits. You're still a member. You're just outside the city limits. So you're going to have a few different rules or less rules to abide by. So when we have specific emails that need to go out, if it's pertaining specifically to people in the city limits and it's very important to them, we have just that one group that we can send these emails to. And then if you're a sponsor or if you're a supporter, then you're going to be asked to define that you don't own a house, you don't rent, yet you are supportive of our purpose. So that will go out in about a month. So you guys are going to see a little repetition if you're on our email list, but it's just asking you to define your position, and then we'll know exactly how to address you. But yes, anybody and everybody is considered a member.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Yeah, oh, sure. I live in Austin. We bought a house over on East Austin Street. After that, and since June we've been doing this. It's been great. My question to you guys is, without them really enforcing the rules they already have in place and no data, and I was at the meeting with you at the park, and you're asking, why would we even, and you, if I'm part of the organization, why would we agree to even try to work around or help them understand the rules until we get that data, until we understand that better? I think one of the positions that this organization should take is maybe we need to get more data before we even try to work around and help you to see what it is. Because some of these things just look untenable. I mean, that number 4, are you kidding me? I mean, surely they can't even admit that. Plus, if they're going to start changing zoning rules, or basically, because if you're saying you can't have an SDR, that's basically change zoning. And that's going to go back to the entire charter of how they change zonings. So I'm glad to hear you're looking at legal options and different things like that. But to me, I feel like they really need to just take about a 6-month moratorium now that they put their second person in place to go by and write the tickets or do whatever they're supposed to do. It's just too early to stand by.
I strongly agree with what you're saying. We've had private citizens who don't like STRs do the same thing. To hold on, just slow down. Let's figure out what you can't fix the problem. You don't know what the problem is. But we also know we have to train. So I don't want to give you a long story. So I won't tell you the long story. But I will tell you sometimes when the train leaves the station here, it's leaving the station. It's going somewhere. So our goal in the first 4 weeks was to work very hard to try to get a rational or logical approach to the ordinance, because we knew we were going to put something in place. I will get into the realm of I think we slowed the city down and made a decision. I think we probably would have an ordinance in place very, very soon if we had this step forward. So, okay.
Ready?
Sir.
One of the narratives going around is that there are a lot of out-of-town owners that cannot be reached when there's a problem. And the narrative is that there's a lot of them, and that's one of the huge problems. Could you address that? How big is it? How factual?
So based on the data that we pulled down, it's roughly a mix of 50-50 in and out of town owners. So one of the things we talked about, again, going back to our brainstorming sessions, how we resolve this. If a police officer is in the room or is responding to an issue, the police officer may walk up to the door party in the back, but he doesn't know who or what to contact. So we want to develop a brand, kind of like Good Housekeeping Seal of Approval, that has a sticker on there where we're an STR Alliance member, good standing in the city, we pay our hot taxes and so forth. And your owner operator is Randy Riley, and here's his cell phone number. So we're trying to, I understand, if somebody goes out of town, we did that for about a year or so, and I have a management company here operating, and they're operating 150 properties, maybe they have one on-call person, it's really tough to handle. So we're trying to figure out creative ways, and that's why we need really, really super smart people to help give us some ideas as well.
Would you be for the out-of-town owner always having to have a local rep to get permitted?
That already exists. I just got my permit, but I got it without a local person.
Yeah.
Already part of the process. It just doesn't seem to be doing any good.
Quick response.
I'm sorry?
A quick response.
Yes.
There's,
Yes.
She is local. The person I hired for all my properties is local, and I'm paying her so much that if they don't call her when there's a problem, then we're set.
I understand, you're good.
I'm saying, that's right part of the process.
Randy, that's a requirement now, that there's a local representative.
The city's doing nothing with it, that's what I'm doing. Right.
I think that will change. But we do have a membership available, did I mention that?
I've already emailed all of them. I had a party for all my neighbors and invited every city council.
Don't be too loud.
Hey.
Yes, sir.
One thing I would really stress is that the town is as pretty or prettier, it was pretty before you got here, but it's as pretty or prettier because of STRs. The owner who doesn't have one does not have to keep it painted, they don't have to do the yard every week. So I'm a native who appreciate that those are kept so well, and I have one. And the thing I wouldn't stress is this ownership. Nothing tires a public official more than somebody running up and says, as a taxpayer, property owner, blah, blah, blah. Who doesn't? And you get into a contest that I can't name here. Because the lady's present. So I wouldn't push that, but the fact that we make the town more beautiful is a truth.
Appreciate it. That's one of the reasons I put these pictures up to show the properties. They are beautiful. We have to keep them that way to be competitive in the market. Thank you for coming.
This is kind of a random thought, but the people that live here, that don't own a vacation rental now, that potentially could benefit from it in the future, it would be really cool if there was some kind of clause in this that said if you live here and you own a house and you've lived in it for a certain amount of time, that you would be allowed to make it into a short term so they can, when they can afford to, that the locals can benefit. Because like I know somebody that they're waiting, it's like 10 years down the road, where they're hoping to make their home into a vacation rental and then like move out into the country or Pergola or something, and that would be their income to retire. So it'd be cool if there was some kind of a clause for the locals with the amount of time you have to be in that home before it can turn into that.
Well, I think the way the ordinance is written right now, our goal is you don't have to wait for anything. If you live there or don't live there, non-owner occupied means I don't live there, but I rent it out as an STR. We don't want to lose that right. And Milton, I know, has done this where his kids are helping to buy a home by money through STR rentals. And I think Leslie had a very similar story. So we agree and support what you're saying. Yes, sir.
So my name is Matt. I own Coast Vacation Rentals here in town, and we've got about over 100 properties here locally. We employ, I think over 30 people here locally. I'm a proud business owner of a non-franchised here local company, and that's obviously going to affect stuff like this. It's going to affect our staff. It's going to affect our owners, our employees, the local economy. We take regulation very, very seriously. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. No company, big CASA, management companies can guarantee everything at every second, but we have the staff here to actually take action in a matter of minutes, and we are 24/7. But there are conferences not only that my staff attends, but there are outreach groups with the Vacation Rental Management Association and internationally that support this kind of thing. There are the Texas Travel Lodging Alliance, the Texas Hotel and Lodging Association that actually support when this happens in towns and regulation. So wanting to know, hey, have you reached out to that to get support, to get advocacy? They have advocacy, hotlines and pages and people to help assist with the kind of things. I have dealt with this firsthand personally in regulation in the past. And then also there is a short-term rental innovation policy summit conference that I highly recommend not only this group go to, it's in Austin, Texas, but there are going to be companies that talk about policy, how to effectively regulate this industry. I mean, companies across the board, I can email a link to you guys. I will personally be attending there, and it's Ken Myers, the Fredericksburg City Manager, is actually a speaker there at this conference.
Yes,
and then so it's, but it's the knowledge of how to effectively manage STRs at a town level and what this transfer there is amazing. I highly recommend that. It's something that, if you have time to absolutely do.
Perfect, thank you for that. Any additional, Sarah? Okay, thank you, Sarah. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I want to take advantage of your time, but the company that they hired to do our hot taxes, and we send things to, and we fill out, I'm responsible for this property, all that data is there. It's very easy to obtain. That's, I mean, I'm sure you brought that to their attention, not so much. But if they make a call, all they have to do is put in an address and they can figure out who's responsible for this property. It can't be the honor.
I understand. I'm not an expert with that. I know you're talking about. I will tell you the city is on record voicing some challenges they're working through. So I can't speak for the city, but I think they're on the radar in terms of some challenges. I'll just leave it at that. That's okay.
Yes, I'm a former STR owner, actually across the street.
Recovering?
Recovering. But I am a sympathizer. And one, I agree with the gentleman up there that we welcome the code enforcement people helping us. I think that we should have a period where the code enforcement people help us to police ourselves. And you can see this gentleman said he's happy now that we're enforcing what we already had in the books. I'm not so sure we need to move on, rather go back and enforce what we've got on the books. I think we could do a very good job, and we probably wouldn't have all the complaints that we have gotten if all of us and the city had done a better job of enforcing what we have on the books now.
I think Ken Meyer actually addressed that. He said the city should have done a better job. So I think they're being very transparent.
And maybe we ought to see what they can do, doing a good job, and take a period to let the dust settle and then decide what changes. I think that was a very good point. Lastly, I know a lot of people, including myself, who bought a property as an investment, and we ran it according to, we tried to be responsible owners. We ran it according to the rules that were in place. I'm concerned about what's going to happen to the people who made those investments in properties, followed the rules, complied with the ordinances, and now are going to, for example, I know some homes that have some large bedrooms where you can put more than 2 beds. You can have a family in there, parents and kids. And these people bought these properties under that business model, and they figured that into the cost of their investment. And all of a sudden, the city is saying, okay, you're no longer in compliance. We're changing the rules. Sorry, you bought the property based on what was the ordinance was when you bought it, and now we're going to change it. And what do you think? The city will be sympathetic to people who are in that position?
So we're very vocal about that. If you think about one of my homes, it's not sort of 1930, the bedroom, but typically 10 by 12 or 10 by 13, something like that. It made perfect sense for those 80, 90-year-old homes. But some other folks have these 5,000, 6,000 square foot homes with 3 or 4 bedrooms, and that simply doesn't make sense. So we're advocating that it's not mandated, X number of bodies in one bedroom, but X number of bodies based on square footage. So we're pushing on that. And again, part of our call to action in Milton here is be vocal about it. Talk to city council. We've written op-eds in the last couple of weeks, if you read through the paper or the digital paper. Be vocal about what makes sense and common sense needs to prevail here. So I agree with what you're saying. Yes, sir.
Motion you had about how many people can be in a house after 70. Do that for a 1,500 house. I'm not starting to do it right off.
What, the square footage?
Yeah.
So square footage in the bedroom. So it's 70 square feet for 2 occupants in a bedroom, not the house. Per bedroom. Because the city was, I know, and that they were concerned about that, because that they were like, you're using the square footage on the whole house, when I have this giant house, these tiny little bedrooms, and you're cramming all these people in there. So that's why we made it a sleeping room, and we defined that. That would take care of that problem. But a larger bedroom, we feel could sleep 4, maybe even 6 people.
What's the math? Still what's the math on? What were they proposing?
All right, man, people, just gonna get yourself up.
So they're proposing it's 2 bodies in 1 bedroom, right?
In the house.
And so if you think about 4 people, it's 70 foot based on our math, another 35, right?
Another 70
So
feet
140 square
for 4
feet
people.
for 4 people, and you keep adding up based on that. So. All right, I know we're well past the promised 1 hour, but let's go for 1 more.
Sorry, this is quick. It was great to hear from Cozy. I was just curious if the other big B&B rental agencies in town are on board with this alliance.
So I'd say yes. One of our founding members is the owner of Guest House, and she's happy to report that she's had a little baby boy, so she's at home resting. I told her that was a weak excuse not to come, but I'm a guy. So yeah, she's on board. Absolute Charm has been very supportive. We've actually been meeting in their facilities for the last 8 weeks, whatever it has been. Again, I don't see this as a competitive environment. We're on the same side of the football on this argument here, or this discussion. Let me correct myself. So everybody here is advocating for smart operations of well-run businesses and being good neighbors. I think that's a common theme that we should all agree on. So yeah, we're definitely those folks.
I have one last question. The different options that the city is, the restrictive sort of ordinances, are those ordinances going to apply to just your standard homeowner like me that doesn't have anything to do with STRs, or are these ordinances part of the permitting process? How is that going to work?
So it could affect your property values.
So it affects you.
So it affects everyone.
More than 2
Because
years.
you may not want to do an STR with your property now, but maybe someday your daughter inherits it and wants to have an STR. That could be a problem for you in the future.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind, if you're not an STR owner and the city comes down with some pretty rigid ordinances, they apply to everything, right? You can't just say STRs have to control the noise. Everybody has to control the noise, right? And so these are pretty challenging recommendations by the city. I kind of want to close out with the gentleman, what's your name? In the blue shirt?
Arnold.
Arnold? I love the simplicity of saying, what the hell is the hurry? Where's the fire? All right, you're going to hear more about fire stuff next week. Let's just watch this play out. Right? My gosh, if we had just enforced the ordinances we put into place in 18, right, we would have been doing it. So what I would like to recommend is that is your call to action. Write letters, make phone calls, whatever, just to say, hold on, slow down here. We're seeing the city looking to attack a very, very important part of the economy in this town. It is the case. So, last comment, we would, Anna, would you like to hold up a beautiful yard signs? We just brought in, I don't know, 250 of these yard signs in the back. We would love that to be a parting gift. We would love to see those in yards all over town. It basically says, we're trying to protect our property rights. Right? We would challenge you to get active, put the signs in your yard, write your letters, and join the SDR Alliance. I'm not quite sure what that means. They do. They do.
No.
But don't you feel like thank you for your time, Clay. I appreciate it. All right. With that, there's signs in the back. Thank you all for coming.